Hello, welcome to Beyondwords Presents. I'm Lindsay Brown, and I'm filling in for Whitney Kwan, Diffendur, for today. And today, our special guest is Sebastian Siegel. He is the filmmaker of Awakening World, Life's Meaning in 5 Questions, 1 Answer. Welcome today.
Hello.
Hi. So I do know that our publisher, Richard Cohn, met you at the Sedona International Film Festival and saw your film and was moved. And I believe that you spoke after that at the Sedona World Wisdom Days with some of the leading experts in personal growth and spirituality. And your film was screened there as well. I have a couple quotes from that conference. After we screened Awakening World, we were touched and moved by its message. We invited Sebastian to speak at Sedona World Wisdom Days, where his voice continued to awaken a new generation of forward thinkers. And Marianne Williamson said, Sebastian Siegel draws insight into the beauty and complexities of the human condition with an inspiring and original voice. So that's quite the endorsement there for your film.
Cool. Very
So
nice.
I think we could start off today maybe having you speak a little bit about thriving in today's world and how it's our personal responsibility for this awakening to happen.
Sure. It's interesting. I think with this film, Awakening World, we cover 5 questions. What's the purpose of life? What's love? What's heaven? What's hell? And what's intimacy? And these questions are so abstract and ethereal when we start to answer them, yet we all have an immediate sense of what they are. Like you'll drive around and you'll say, well, there's a bumper sticker that says, love is the answer. All we need is love, right? And we all feel that intuitively. And I think that that's on point, and I think that that's true. And yet, why is there so much discourse in the world? Why is there so much disagreement? You feel that, you'll see a bumper sticker, and then the person who's the car the bumper sticker is on is giving someone else the finger, right? And is angry and is upset because we collide with differences of opinions and different interests and different. So I think that grounding those things in a doing and grounding those things in action is very important. When it comes to, as we discussed, thriving, I think that we look at what are the fundamental factors, right, within our life, right? And interpersonal connection is, since the very beginning of time, even before we existed as people, just prehension on a base level, whether it's after the Big Bang and atoms interacting and molecules interacting and then cells interacting, that everything occurs, even this conversation, the way we feel, what we think, is all this complex inner working, this complex network of communication, right, and of sharing and of response. And so I think that in terms of thriving in our life, that if we can choose and make those connections and that path of connectivity as clear as possible in terms of what we want. So I think first in terms of thriving, the idea is, all right, if I want to thrive, if I want more from my life, if I want to feel like I'm thriving more, what are the areas or what are the things that I feel like I want more of, right? And I think that a good way to go about locating that is to think, well, if I died today and I could come back and look at my life and experience my life, what would we regret, right? Because we never regret what we did. It's not like I lived too much or I gave too much or I risked too much. It's always like, man, I wish I would have loved more. I wish I would have lived more. I wish I would have connected more. I wish I would have shown more of who I am. I wish I would have taken more risk, right? So I think in terms of interconnectivity and the people that surround us, I think that this coming into this world, right, from the moment we come out of the womb and through our whole lives, we experience this sense of separateness, yeah, and this sense of aloneness. And then a lot of times we will engage or participate in relationships that make us feel good in the moment, but that ultimately we don't feel like we're being the most of ourselves. And so I think a great exercise is to write down in a circle on a piece of paper, not a list, but just all the names of people we're in contact with, like acquaintances, friends, family, etc. And then using a 1 through 5, write a number next to each one of these individuals, right? And to what degree does spending time with this individual allow me to feel like I'm really being the most of me, right? In other words, not just enjoyment, because I certainly have friends or people that I run into that I feel like I really enjoy being with this person, right? and that's common. But I think that there are certain people that we draw into our lives that not only do we enjoy being around, but we feel like, okay, I've really got to show up as my best. I've really got to give my best with this person, right? And when I'm with this person, I might try new things. I might think in a different way. It might inspire me or motivate me to participate in life in ways that I might not otherwise, in ways that aren't just comfortable, right? And so I think that if we and I did this many years ago, and I say, okay, that these individuals I might be intimidated by, or slightly uncomfortable with, or drawn to, and what is that thing? Is it because I am shying away from life, or is it because I'm diving into life, right? And if I say, no, when I'm with this person, I feel like I'm driving into life, right? I feel like I'm demanding the most of myself. And so I would say, okay, I want to put a 4 or 5 by that person. If I say, well, all right, this person I really enjoy being around and it's fun, but I always feel like, maybe we just watch TV and it feels good, but it's not as rewarding. Whereas this person, I might get into discussion that's challenging for me, where I have to show my own vulnerabilities, where I have to reveal aspects of myself that I want to confront, or that I want to look at, or that I want to examine. And I think that drawing these individuals into our lives and making a disciplined choice to spend time around people that influence us in wonderful ways has a profound impact on our lives. Obviously, we become more like the people that we surround ourselves with.
So we should be seeking people who force us to be authentic, but also to try new things, push ourselves, think big.
Right.
Basically.
Big time. It's interesting, right? Because it sounds so simple, and it's like love is all we need, right? Or love is the answer, or etc. It's like a bumper sticker. But up here, cognitively, is very simple, right? And you say, okay, that's fundamental, but it is profound in terms of, because simple is one thing, and then fundamental. The fundamental root of a house is the foundation, right? And that you've got to have this incredible foundation. And I think of that as an aspect of the foundation of the way that I show up and the way that I experience life every single day.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, right? If to draw an extreme analogy, right? If you had a place in a house and you were renting out a room for someone to live with you for a year, and that person was a pastry chef, right? At the end of the year, probably, whether you like pastries or not, you're going to try some new pastries, right? And you're probably going to eat a few of them. And that's
gain some weight.
Yeah. And you're probably going to learn how to cook them, and that can be a wonderful thing. And if you rent out the room to somebody who wrote the dictionary, then you're probably going to learn some new words, right? How to use those, etc. So I think that success leaves clues, right? And I think that what we want in our life can be success modeled. And I think that our minds operate very powerfully in that intuitive way to model and to emulate, since we're young children, what we seek in life. It's like if you see a young boy or young girl with their mother or their father, and the boy, walks around and he looks just like his dad, and he, moves his shoulders in that way, or the girl, tends to move or talk or act or copy the mannerisms of her mother. And I think that we carry that throughout life, that we emulate what we seek, right? And so I think that that's a powerful choice, who we bring in. I think if I bring someone in, I say, boy, I respect and admire and can find something beautiful and something I can learn from in every single person. And I think that the writing the numbers around people's names is certainly not a hierarchical list of importance or value. It's just in terms of, within the context of thriving, what do I want to draw into my life? Then I've got to pull it also from the outside world, right, as well, and have those things around me to inspire me.
Right. And so if you are seeking like a big change in your life, whether it's seeking a companion or seeking a new career, profession, making a list like this and looking at the people who are in your life and determining who you can rely on to help you with this next phase, that would be an important tool.
Sure. And I think it's also, it brings up an integral aspect of interpersonal connection, and just that very process is that you say, well, how do I bring people closer to me? And it doesn't have to be a large volume of time. Let's say, how do I bring someone closer to me that's an acquaintance or that I work with, that I really admire what they do in a certain way, or something about the way that they live, conduct themselves. And it's saying, well, loving is loving someone the way they want to be loved, right? In one way, not just the way that I want to care for them, right? And then there are obviously also deeper elements of, and other aspects of loving, which is hard compassion and real compassion. It says, okay, as your friend, I want to tell you, or as your parent, or as your sibling, or as your son or daughter, this is, I think, what's important. But in this context, in terms of drawing people in, it's saying, how can I contribute to these individuals' lives, right? What is the most important thing to them? How can I show up best for them? What are they seeking in this world? What do they want more of? And how can I bring that on a regular basis? And I think that action and that activity for me has been a profound learning tool that I've connected with people, and I thought, well, what's important to them is this. And I've got to really show up, and like what's important to them is to really make them feel like they're the center of attention and show them a great time, and they love to learn new things. So I said, okay, well, I've really got to think about how I'm going to construct my afternoon or my dinner or my morning or my hike or whatever the thing is with this individual. And that's a really fun thing to do. And it also brings different aspects of me out within that process.
So did you come to this conclusion when you were deciding to make this movie? And I'm curious to see how the movie fits into this. Or did you use this practice to create this movie? Because I believe you spent 7 years making this movie, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Like a labor of love right there.
That's right.
So how did you use this tool of thriving and taking responsibility for how you connect to the people around you to make this movie?
It's not directly related to the film, right? I mean, the film is really started off as an artistic venture and just an exploratory process by which I started interviewing individuals. So like James Whitmore, the late actor from The Shawshank Redemption, was one of my first interviews, one of my early interviews, and he was a mentor for me for the last 10 years of his life. And I think that he was somebody who I admired just in the way that he lived, in the way that he loved, in the way that he worked, in the way that he showed up in life. And he was someone who certainly I felt like this guy is edgy and he's rough around the edges, but I admire him, right? This guy's incredible the way he lives. I mean, 5 a.m. and he's up and he's doing his exercises in the pool, whether he's 70 or 80, it's happening, right? And the love that he would show to his wife, and he'd wake up and make her a papaya and write her a love note. I mean, this is an incredible reference point for what's possible, right, in growing old. And he's got this thriving way that he goes about his work and this care for it. And so I said, this is somebody who I want to draw in my life, but he's so macho, right? He's so tough. He's so rough around the edges. So I've really got to show up and be, for him. And his interests at that time were also politics and art and film and acting. And so whenever I would show up at his place, I would really look at things to discuss that were around that. So politics, we would always look at politics from Latin America and from America, and how much it's changed in his life and the different things that were being proposed politically in the United States. And so that opened me up to a new world. And then I found when I got in there in his world that he was this most tender guy underneath, this most loving, sweet guy. So I think that it didn't directly correlate with the making of the film, but certainly there were these things within people that I love and appreciate, who I said, I'd love to interview this person on this subject matter, right? So Jim was one of those, and then John Daly, the late producer, was one of those, filmmaker, and beautiful, incredible man. And Marianne was one that we were friends at the time, and that she's become an incredible friend and someone who I admire and respect enormously. And Ken Wilbur and everyone in my film. And that is also to this young boy who's in the film, Philip, who's 7 at the time that I interview him. And he was burned alive when he was a young boy. And so it was a very intense experience for him and for his family. And then this, what would seemingly be a setback for so many people, became something through which he thrived, that he depended on certain tools of connectivity. And here's like this charming young boy, this charming now young man, who's got these skills to connect because he's comfortable in one way that maybe other people don't grow up naturally being comfortable connecting in some certain way.
Mm-hmm. And this unique situation that he found himself in kind of forced him to become more open to this connectivity, would you say? Or
I think that any circumstance, that it's like the homeless person on the corner.
The challenges they face.
Right? That we all face a variety of different challenges in life, right? And so it's the meaning that we apply to those challenges that determine how it shapes and molds us, right? So you have so many people who are in some extreme circumstance, whether it's war or death or divorce or any kind of pain, losing a loved one or an illness, where somebody says, this is personal, right? I mean, the world doesn't like me, right? And that right there is the worst diagnosis, obviously, that we can give ourselves, where if we say, okay, this is a challenge, and how am I going to apprehend this? And I think that that's another powerful point, I think, in thriving, which is building from appreciation, right? So if I look at any challenge in my life and I think, man, this is tough, right? I mean, this is all this airy-fairy talk about feeling good and thriving and motivation and spirituality and meditation and all that. It's all great, but I mean, I've got this serious illness, right? Or I've got this, I just lost my home, or whatever the situation is, right? We think, well, a great exercise I like to do is there's always a worse position that we can be in. So imagine all the challenges I've got or problems I've got right now, minus my hand. I'm missing a hand. Okay, well, imagine all of them, and I'm missing my legs. I'm missing both of my legs, right? I say, okay, my challenges maybe aren't so bad. I say, okay, there's a guy, I have a friend with no legs, and he's become one of the fastest sprinters in the world, right? And this guy is so full of life, right? And then I look, that's the look online, and I say, well, there's this guy with no arms, no legs who swam across the English Channel. Like I have no right to complain. I have no right to be down. But yet, it still hurts, right? Yet my challenges are still very real. But I think that at least contextualizes them in a way to say that, okay, we all hurt, we're all going to die, and that's okay. I'm not going to take myself too seriously. This is real, this pain, but I'm just going to take it one step at a time instead of trying to fix the whole problem today. I'm going to take one little thing. Look, I've got a hand, I've got two hands, I've got two legs, I've got whatever tools I have. I'm just going to take one little step, whatever that thing is. If it means drinking a glass of water, or eating something different, or engaging in a different way, or taking a new discipline, or whatever the factor is. They're breaking it down to something very, very simple action item.
Can you tell me a little bit about the 5 questions that you asked people in the movie?
What do you want to know?
Well, what were they? I mean, how did you come to the 5?
What's the purpose of life? What's love? What's heaven? What's hell? What's intimacy? And then there are 3 more questions in the second part of the film: is what's God, what's religions, and what's spirituality.
Okay. And were you surprised by some of the answers you got, or were they all somewhat similar?
All the answers are very unique. All the responses are very unique. And I think that it's also something that is abstract and ethereal when we look at those questions. So there's so many love songs, and so many works of art, so many poems that have been written about all of these things. What's love? And so it's this practice, right? That engaging in the participation of these questions on a day-to-day basis, I think, is a practice that allows us to stay the course with our priorities, right?
And to thrive.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we walk out the door in the morning, we think, okay, all right, I understand all these things. I think, wait a second, what's the most important thing? Is it really to love and to connect? Because if that's the case, then the first person I run into, I want to really greet that human being. I want to see them, I want to see their eyes, and I want to let them feel seen, right? That's a really cool thing. And then we do something that's so simple like that, and it feels really good, right?
You get the benefits from that interaction just as much as they do.
For sure, because that engagement is co-created, right? That moment between individuals is a co-emergent new life force, right, being created. So it's only as wonderful as I show up or as I allow it to be. So how wonderful do I allow it to be? If I make that decision every day that I'm going to allow my connection with individuals and human beings to be wonderful, I'm going to allow people, I'm going to allow myself to be uncomfortable, I think is an important statement to make.
Make yourself vulnerable, basically, too.
I'm going to allow that, that I'm okay with it, right? It's interesting, I was at a stoplight day before yesterday, and there was a guy, and he was kind of hooting and hollering in traffic, and he was living on the street, and he was going up to people, and traffic was moving really slow, and he was going into people's, knocking on their windows, and people were really turning him away because they felt threatened by this guy, understand. So I was really enjoying myself, and I was talking with someone, and we were having a great conversation. And this guy came up, and I looked over out the window, and there he is, and he's like asking me these questions, and I just met him without this expectation because I had seen what was happening peripherally, but I didn't really
experience it.
Yeah, I just didn't feel that it was threatening in any kind of way, right? And so I allowed him into my world, and I was like, hey man, I was like, how's it going, man? You're looking good. Like it was his energy that was looking good. He looked like he was, loaded, and had been sleeping on the street for a few weeks at least. But I let him into my world, and I said, hey man, you're looking good. How's it going? And he was like, really? He said, me? Like this? And he said, all right. Okay. So what is that? That's simple, no big deal. So what, right? But what's life made of? It's those moments of interconnectivity, and I think that it's that moment of being seen that drives hope into life. Yeah.
Treat him as a human, and not just roll up your window and ignore him, and he doesn't exist. You made him exist.
Absolutely, and I think that made
his day.
I think that it made my day. Right. I mean, I think that what you're getting at in that word, even the treating, is the process. Right. Treating him as a human is something that is the reward for me. Right. It's the reward of the treator. Right. It's like if I have a dinner party, if I have 10 people for dinner, if I cook dinner for one person, doing it for them, I get the greatest gift for sure. Right. I think that the power of allowing people to be seen and just seeing one another is so profound, and I don't think it can be underscored enough. I think that as a kid, I know for me, in some of the collaborative sports that so many schools, grade schools and high schools and colleges, or even in the workplace, that there can be a projection of identity. Right, like so. For instance, like in any team sport, where it's like, all right, we're going to go out and do this, but there's no moment to authentically connect, right? And I think that we run into that challenge too online. That people, we are always putting forth an identity and a personality, and so in that putting forth, we're always one removed from authentic connection, right? So as much as it connects us, it also disconnects us.
Do you find that you're in the Los Angeles area, so do you find that there's areas in the country that are more subject to this disconnect? Do you feel like in California or where you are, do you see it more often because of the industry that's so prevalent down there?
I think that pathology and disconnect runs into any area of life and in any vocation and in any arena, and just like profound connection does as well. And I think that pertinent to what we discussed right at the top here about drawing the people into our lives that we admire is something that we do to jump through that, right? I mean, I think that engaging with anybody, whether it's a child or someone we admire or the homeless guy on the corner, is important. I think that drawing in the people into our lives that we're going to spend regular time interacting with is an important statement to ourselves about how we're moving forward in life. That is this person a contributor, and how can I contribute to this person's life to draw them in so that I can learn from them.
Mm-hmm. So these interconnections that you have, are these connections that you have throughout your life, do you say they have a direct influence on the answers to these 5 deep questions? You know, they constantly are morphing and changing and reflect what's going on in your life?
Can you restate that?
Yeah, long term. I was just curious, like, as these connections happen, the idea is that you're becoming a better person, a better version of yourself, maybe deeper, more spiritual, more awakened, you thriving. And so would you say somebody in the beginning who maybe are asking these questions, they see your movie and they start asking themselves these questions, these deep 5 questions, as they start opening themselves up, how do their answers change? Or are they stagnant, or are they changing and morphing as they thrive and start to take that responsibility for themselves?
Completely changing. And the number of people who are in the film who said, "Oh, what did I say? I want to see my full interview." Right? I would answer that differently now, completely. Right. I think that that question, thanks so much for that, really nails it as a process. Because I think this film is interesting. That oftentimes someone will watch it and they'll say, "All right, cool," and then they'll watch it a second time. They'll say, "Oh, you know what? I watched it a second time with my wife, or my husband, or my brother, or my son, or my daughter, or my parents, and whoa, we got into the best discussion afterwards." Because that is the process, right? It's like the idea of meditation or prayer, going to some location, right? And that's the beginning of the end. It's not trying to get to a location. It's the process of. It's absolutely the process of doing, right? And so. It was interesting. A friend of mine lives in Hawaii, and he'd taken his daughters and his wife to see a screening of it out there. And he said, "You know, I'm not even sure if I liked the film." He said, "But we had the best discussion on the way home, right, with my daughters, you know, about what these things are, right?" And I think that renewal of life and of what we're doing here on a daily basis is really powerful.
So the movie connects people. It actually starts the conversation, the dialogue.
Big time.
Okay. Yeah. So obviously when you came up with these 5 questions, did you answer them for yourself first, or did you kind of like hold back and see what other people had to say before you started answering them for yourself?
I think I've always
like a process that got you into, you know, looking for that awakening and that thriving for yourself.
I think I've always been asking and answering those and seeking those things out. I think as a kid, my father was a professor of comparative religions, and India was his specialty. And so I think that reading those comics as a kid, his Hindu comics, had me asking these questions about what's eternal in life, right? And
that's a deep question for a kid. Incredibly deep.
and I think that, you know, it's like life is so abstract, right? That we're all going to die, and everyone remembers us. And we think, oh well, you know, we got to leave a legacy, right? Fine. Everyone that remembers us is going to die, and then eventually the sun, you know, the Earth is going to fall into the sun, and the sun's going to burn out. Okay, so what's the point? You know, what's the point? Like, what am I going to do today, right? So I think that comes down to interconnectivity. That the only thing that lives on is this pattern, is this electromagnetic, this frequency of doing, right? That we are a pattern of intelligence, that any life force is a pattern of intelligence. And so the way in which we experience life and connect with one another lives on forever. And even if it's just that moment of feeling seen, the impact that can have, right? I know that you know, we can be like at the most distraught place, right? Like, let's say we just feel horrible. We feel at the end like we just feel like surrendering, right? We feel suicidal, right? Which is a feeling really of not being seen, complete hopelessness, yeah. Or that the pain is too much to go on, right? Pain of living is not worth the price of the candle. That at that moment, you know, if a stranger, if anybody, just gives us a little bit of eye contact, a little bit of care, a little bit of "I see you," that can change everything, right, in an instant. I think is very powerful. I think it's very profound. And so I think the process of asking these questions and exploring these questions is a good engagement into that process of allowing ourselves to feel, to see, and to feel seen.
So do you suggest people ask these every morning before they get up and seize the day? Is it something that they should do every year, like a New Year's resolution, just to get centered again and find focus?
I think it's the kind of thing that, you know, when you say, okay, I've got this Friday evening off, right, and what am I going to do? And you feel just like excited, you're going to go have fun, right? Fantastic. But you feel like, you know, there's really something in my life I'm not touching. Like I want to connect more. Like what's your level of thirst, right, for deep interconnectivity? Mine's profound. Like I really want to connect at the deepest level all the time. Like I want to jump in there. I want to engage, right? I want to devour. I want to be in a place where I have to be courageous, right? I want to be beyond my comfort zone. So I like that. I like drawing in relationships also that that are catalytic towards that. So I think it's like, you know.
So what if you're a homebody and you don't have that exciting, I want to be out meeting people on a Friday night? How do you still have the thriving atmosphere if you can't necessarily be this outgoing, meeting new people, having philosophical conversations with people about life after death and these things? How does it work for the average person who might feel a little shy?
Okay, I think all of this is about the average person. I think we all are, right, as participators in life, the average person, right? We all are. There is no one particular gauge point for that. And I think that, you know, it's like the time spent alone to say, okay, do I want to watch this show because it helps me disconnect with life, or do I want to watch this thing because it draws me in, or it has me challenged in some way? Do I want to read this book because it is a it's a divergent, or do I want to read this book because this is gonna be, you know, something that is gonna open my eyes in a new way. It's new material for me, right? I think that making choices like that requires a certain discipline, and I think that discipline ultimately is freedom. It's not a moral issue, right? It's just that discipline is freedom. It's just that when we are disciplined to say, yeah, I'm going to do this, this is tough, this is challenging a little bit or a lot, that I think that we feel good about it, right? That happiness is interlinked with fulfillment, right? We can have happy moments at any instant, right? But that fulfillment comes from sacrifice. Right? We've got
taking that responsibility to thrive is to not disconnect, because you can definitely pull yourself back.
Yeah, but disconnect meaning even if I'm here alone, right, myself, that really feeling what's going on inside of me and really accepting and forgiving my feelings or my thoughts or my state, and allowing that to be seen, right? That we have to fully experience it, fully experience ourselves. So to bring those things forth, we have to acknowledge them and say, all right, what do I really feel here, right? And it can be with any impulse. So for example, like I'm really hungry. What is it? Am I really hungry? Do I really want to eat? Is it something like nutrition that I'm seeking, or is it that I'm anxious, right? Is it that I'm eating for some other purpose, for some other reason, right? And then it's not about good or bad, not to give it a judgment, just to say, what is it that I'm feeling? Okay, I'm feeling like I am really anxious, right? Or I'm depressed, or I'm sad because I've lost someone dear to me, and I just want to eat myself into oblivion, right? And I say, okay, maybe.
And then you make the choice: do I want to eat, or maybe I should go do something, be around people?
Sure, or work through it as an exercise and write it out and say, well, what happens if I do this? What happens if I eat this? How will I feel afterwards? Right? What happens if I call someone who I admire and respect? How will I feel after that? What happens if I say, okay, look, I'm going to eat whatever I want. I'm going to just eat myself into oblivion. But first, I'm going to make a commitment. I'm going to say I'm going to exercise for 15 minutes. I'm just going to go on a 15-minute walk. I'm going to spend a few minutes calling someone who I really respect and admire, or who I love, or and doing those things first, and then also writing out, how am I going to feel after I do this exercise? How am I going to feel after I talk to this person? How am I going to feel if I just give into this base impulse? How's that going to make me feel? And then will the challenge still be there afterwards? Right?
So I'm curious. So is there any of your favorite answers from the people that you interviewed? Was there anything that was just like blown away? Wow, best answer ever.
All of them.
Any of your personal favorites?
No, all of them. All of them. And I think that every time I see the film, it's different for me. It's a different experience depending on how I show up, depending on whatever state I'm in, right? That something will resonate with me differently in every single viewing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I have experienced and heard that a lot from people who've seen it, especially multiple times. We get that kind of feedback. Right?
Mm-hmm. So did the film give you the opportunity to seek out people, like teachers that you've always wanted to speak to? It gave you like kind of a purpose to seek out the ones that you've always thought about and wanted to connect with them?
You know, everybody in the film I admire, right, and just adore and respect. Also for speaking candidly, yeah, because it's not a subject matter that oftentimes people are comfortable speaking candidly about, and so, like every single one of these people is a teacher for me every time I watch it, right? I mean, I respect vulnerability. I admire willingness to show up and
be authentic.
Yeah, I do, right? It takes a lot of courage, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that I think it's like that's the new authenticity is the thing that we, I think, seek in such a digitally connected world, right?
Well, the world of, editing and photoshopping and where we don't show anything that's authentic anymore because we go through so much editing before we even put it out there into the world. So.
And that's right, contextual to what we're talking about with the projection of identity, right? That it's always one removed from authenticity. That essentially this type of online connection is giving depression a new face in that way because there is a discomfort and a spontaneity that happens with interpersonal connection where we're in the same room or we're in the same proximity with one another, right? That we might all of a sudden feel sad and like crying, or we might cough, or we might choke, or something like that. And then in that circumstance, how people interact and react allows us to learn who we are, right? How we respond to one another in those circumstances. And that is all that doesn't occur with the projection of identity, right? That occurs with technological communication.
Mm-hmm. So, based on the exercise you mentioned about writing down all the people in your life and rating them, so that you can kind of get a sense of who has the most influence in a positive way, I guess, or a more authentic way in your life. Is there any other tools they can take away from this that they can start using right away?
Yeah, I think. First on that one, it's just really about drawing out individuals, right, writing a list of names and saying, when I'm around this person, I show up in the world in a way that I really respect myself, right, in a way that I really feel proud of myself. I contribute more, right? And then saying, all right, I ought to make more time to draw these individuals in my life, to spend more time with these people, right? Then I think that building from appreciation, right, like we were discussing, just contextualizing whatever challenges that we have and saying, well, whatever challenge I have, imagine taking the exact same thing and having no arms or no legs or not being able to see or whatever that thing is, right? And then we say, okay, all right, well, I want to build from what I do have, right? What I do have is just this breath, right? Maybe I feel angst or whatever the challenge is, right? And it's okay. I'm going to accept this angst. At least I've got this breath and these arms or these legs or this sight, and I'm going to move forward with this one little step, right? And that sense of purpose of just taking one little step is really the bridge out of whatever overwhelming challenge we are blinded by, right, or we are buried by. Yeah. It's interesting. There was I was reading some different stories about people that were in concentration camp, and there was this guy who went in, who had this, lived a great life and was just didn't overthink things, but really would always doing with a sense of purpose. Yeah? Mm-hmm. And then he went into concentration camp, and he just had this horrible, the worst possible human experience.
Purpose was taken away.
For 4 years. Well, during his time there, this character shone through in the way that he also just participated in a way of doing. If they said to march, he would march. Right? If he was digging in the field, he would just dig. If he came across something, he would eat it, and he would just do. And his sense of that experience was just in a way of just doing whatever needed to be done. If that meant emptying the bucket of excrement from 600 people sleeping in the same room that had to share the same bucket, then that's what it meant. And if it sucked, it sucked. But just saying, okay, I'm here now. This is what I'm going to do. This is all I can do right now in this life, right? And I'm going to stay the course, right? And I'm not going to bury myself in it. If it hurts, it's okay. So he lived through it. And then he gets out, and then he ends up being like this great athlete, And it was interesting. Even when he got out, he didn't know he was out. They had actually marched out of a camp, and they were told to keep marching. The guy just kept marching until some people finally told to him and people that were with him to stop. That they were done. So I think the purposefulness, right, in a sense of thriving, and just bringing that to the most basic, first step in anything that we're doing is. Key.
Absolutely. So, is there anything happening right now out in the world that you think ties in with this message? Is there anything that we're obviously challenged by our very tech-driven world, where it's a superficial, social media-driven world, and we have that against us. Is there anything else that we have to overcome to try to become our authentic selves and to thrive? Big question.
It's a great question. Don't you think that it's just in being human, right? That's enough, right? It's
hard.
Such a right. Yeah, it is. But I think that's what draws us together. It's like the first time I ever heard that REM song, "Everybody Hurts." I first thought, oh man, that song's a bummer. I don't want to listen to that. And then the more I listened to it, the more I thought, this is great. We all hurt. That no matter what happens, no matter who you are, no matter how old, man, woman. No matter what you do, no matter anything, we all hurt. So let's celebrate that. No matter who I run into today, they hurt, and I hurt, right, on some level. And I think drawing that pain into daily life is a really wonderful salt that binds us, that we're bound by. So I think that's the underlying essence too of all however the differentials and war and pain and whatever things that we create, however we manifest the challenges in life. I think they're born out of I think that examining that we all have this common pain is something that is ultimately the first step into reconciliation for that.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Well, a common, discussion I think out there now, and you hear it sometimes, people will say first world problems and things like that. There's things much worse than what we have to deal with here in our own home. And so people feel kind of a depression and desperation because they feel like that just like you said, my pains don't matter as much because this is nothing compared to what's happening in the Middle East or in Syria or in North Korea. And so that can start to really overwhelm a person and make you feel like a bad person because you're lost your job and haven't been able to find a new one in 12 months, 2 years. So, that perspective, there is the perspective, but to be able to still value how you're feeling, that's a challenge, I think, for people here today. What would you suggest then, when somebody's just like, what's the point? First world problems.
Yeah, totally. I think, first off, there's no hope without participation. And I think however small that level of participation is doesn't matter as much as the act of participating, right? It's like donating $5 or $1 or whatever it is to something, you say, okay, all right, I pay $5 a month or $20 a month or $50 a month to Greenpeace, or I give something here or there, or I support, I show up and I support this thing. That then we feel like, okay, I'm part of the solution here, or that engagement I think is important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean I think that's the fundamental step, or the fundamental, because otherwise it's totally overwhelming, right? We look at everything that's occurring in the world and we say, well, we can't fix all these things, but I can participate in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and that's we want all these external things to change, right? But it really starts obviously just with us, right? And so I think that the moment we engage in that, it opens up a whole new world. It opens up a whole new attention. It opens up a whole new field of information, right? And it's like you donate to something small, and then you read a little bit about it, and then you find it interesting, and then someone else has, and then they've got the T-shirt, and then you've got this conversation going with somebody you don't know, and then right, and that's how it starts.
No balls.
Yeah, and I think that it's important to hold also, like we're saying, that the pain of everything in the world in us a little bit every day, right, and to keep that very real and to feel that, and then to participate in some way.
Mm-hmm. Very positive take on it. So I'm curious, like, who are your most favorite teachers right now? What are your most favorite books that you're reading that help you kind of keep this going, this energy to keep this connection going?
Gosh, I'm not sure if the two are, I'm not sure how closely the two are related, right? Like, I mean, I wouldn't say that I'm reading to keep the connection going, right? But I'm definitely, Ken Wilber's been a huge impact on my life, and I think that one of my all-time favorite books is Sex, Ecology, and Spirituality, which is just brilliant. And then there's essentially an abridged version of that, which is called Brief History of Everything, just spectacular. And then, I mean, all of his books are so wonderful. Sri Ramana Maharshi. His work has been profound for me, and he's been a big impact on my life. All of Alan Watts' stuff. Those are readers that I always, writers, authors, teachers that I always go back to. They're always helpful for me.
When you feel lost or just kind of floundering a little bit?
But just in any moment, like before bed, if I'm going to read something, or first thing in the morning, that I like to read from someone or something that is inspiring, that touches, that penetrates, right? And all these different, right? That I'm lit up in a lot of ways.
Makes for good conversation too. So the philosophical conversations that you have that help you, keep that connection going. So, okay. Well, so what if somebody watching us today doesn't feel very technically spiritual or connected spiritually? Is that an important piece, you think, that everybody needs to find whatever that is for themselves to thrive?
How do you mean?
Well, there's questions about God. Like, what is God, or what is spirituality to you? And if a person just watching this says, "Well, I'm not spiritual, so this message isn't for me. I don't really believe in any of this." People will say this is too new agey for me. I'm scared of that. What would you say to them?
So they're right.
They're right.
I mean, there's this. It isn't new agey, and I think that I'm a paradigm buster for that. That this is about fundamental life force. It's just about
fundamental life force.
It's about existing as a human being. That this is we're not selling anything. We're not trying to push anything, right? This is just like I had these questions and about life. What is the purpose of life? What is love? What is hell, heaven? In other words, what's the worst thing that we can do and create together? What's the ugliest world? What is the most beautiful world, right? What's intimacy, right? In other words, what are we doing here? How do we connect deeper, better? How do we create a world that's more spectacular, that's more liberated, with less pain, with more connection, with more joy, right? The question of what is hell is really about what's the worst possible world we can create, and how do we do that? when we experience that hell and those moments, what is it that we're doing that takes us there, right? And when we're experiencing heaven, or this idea of this wonderful experience, right? Of when the world is wonderful, when it feels magnificent, what is it that we are doing? Because there are actions that create those two different worlds, right? And they're here and they're now, and they're all the time, and they're every day, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do we do more, create more of the feeling of abundance and the feeling of interconnectivity and the feeling of vibrance, right? And the feeling of thriving, right? How do we open up the channels to allow ourselves to connect better and more deeply, right? And those things are all interrelated, and you'll have to watch the film.
Well, no, I would love to get your take. I mean, I'm going to put you on the spot. So if I asked you the question, what is hell? What's Sebastian's answer to that?
Yeah. Hell is a place that's completely disconnected, right? It's a place of solitude, of not being heard or seen, of experiencing and feeling people that we, animals, things that we love in life, being marginalized, being tortured, right? That feeling that there's no sense of purpose, right? There's no reason to take another step, to wake up, to take another breath. Hopelessness,
Mm-hmm.
right? Not being received by the world, not having a place in the world, right? Not belonging in the world, right? Seeing the people, the things that we care for, experience those feelings of not belonging, of pain, of oppression, of sadness, of loss.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So your take on that, a lot of people would be like, I'm in hell then. Yeah, the people who are depressed and lost and having severe depression of some sort, they can feel like they literally are in their own hell.
It's an interesting pronoun. I think we is important one there, because I think we all experience that
Mm-hmm.
often, right? I mean, I think that we all experience that, in other words, in some part of our minds and our beings, right, that occurs at some point, right, as part of living in this world, right? And even if it's not directly, even if we don't feel that we can pick that up from someone else, and then that pain is very real, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that's everyone, that's part of being alive, that hell, right? That isn't a state, that is a kind of
Fiery flame.
it's something that occurs all the time, right? It's part of being human.
Mm-hmm.
And
go ahead. I was gonna say, so what's heaven for you then? Is it the connectivity, the feeling of being loved and part of something bigger?
Yeah, so the converse of that, right? There's a sense of hope, a sense of doing, a reason to wake up, a reason to take another breath, a feeling like there's a place for me in this world, right? When we feel like, not only is there a place for me in this world, but I can deliver a sense of purpose and meaning for other people, that I allow other people to feel seen and to feel loved, right? To be excited by life, right? To feel connected, right? To feel that I can be transparent, right, with people around me, that I can show myself, that I can be self-actualizing, that I can step into greater aspects and know deeper and greater aspects of myself and those around me, right? And, those two things are always occurring, right? They're always one step away, right? It's always hell and heaven. In other words, it's always fantastic opportunity, right, to connect and to be alive and to thrive, and it's always total disconnect and hopelessness, and it's always right there, right, at our fingertips, and it comes with a choice, with saying, okay, is this the beginning or is this the end?
Right.
Is life a job or is life an adventure, right? I mean,
we're living it right now. Some people would immediately answer and say, well, those are what happens after my life. I'm just getting towards this good thing or this bad thing that I think exists, that I've been taught in Sunday school when I was a child or something like that. But you're saying, stop, it's happening now, decide what you want.
every single moment, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So if a person did answer, so your answer is very progressive, I would say. And everyone's gonna have a different answer. So what if someone did say they have much more of a religious take on what heaven and hell is, and so instead they live in fear of whether they will experience heaven or hell, and that all their actions in life are based on finding that, the heaven. Nobody wants to go to hell. So their actions are based on what they think they need to be and who they need to be, and maybe not be authentic to themselves, but they're working towards that goal. And so your kind of take is that, well, it can be basically these answers can be anything for anybody, but to pull back and just experience what you're living with right now, your heaven, your hell, and how you can actually influence it, I guess. Is that right? That's what I'm taking from this.
Yeah. Right. So they're like, happiness is just a shift, right, in perspective, right? It's just a paradigm shift. It's you have, however you live with the people that surround us, right, with the things that we experience, the things that we eat, that we drink, right, the people that we interact with, right, the work that we do, right. And then we can change and let's say we feel sad or low, that with this small internal shift in the way that we perceive things, the whole external world takes on a new luster, right, and a new territory and a new feeling to it, right, and that we can't push that on someone else, right. We can do that ourselves, right? And so by receiving everyone that we come into contact with in a way that is hopeful, in a way that is compassionate, in a way that is forgiving, is really a cool step, and I think an integral aspect of allowing interconnectivity and joy, and so heaven, and so
awakening,
and thriving to occur, right? It's just about how can we fertilize the ground in a way that allows for depth connection, right? In a way that allows for fun, right? In a way that allows for authentic interconnectivity.
Okay. Well, we're just about out of time, so thank you so much for this deep conversation, because it is deep. I think that anybody could sit around a dinner table and talk about this for hours. So these 5 questions. So I just wanted to thank you, and also let everybody know who's watching that we do have the DVD for sale. It's at beyondword.com/Siegel, and we're discounted at 33% off, so it's coming in at $9.95. So do go onto the website, get a copy, and start this process, because it will open up for lots of conversation, I'm sure, with the people you love. So thank you, Sebastian.
Thanks so much.
All right. Bye.
Bye.